Thank you for sort of taking the time, spending time with us.
Yes, of course.
Cool. So I'll just say in general, we're trying to explore business from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Just talk to people about the impact business can have on human existence.
Yeah.
Cool. So your story was very moving for me personally. So I was wondering if you could sort of introduce yourself, what you're working on, and sort of your story so far for the audience.
Yes. So my name is Charisse Fontes, and I like to let people know that I am human. It's so important to remind yourself of your humanness and also others. And currently, I run two companies. One is called Culture Circle, where I help companies create healthy and inclusive workplace cultures. So we're really focused on creating a culture of care, which means culture amplified represents everyone. So really making sure that we're bringing humanity into the workplace. The second company I have is a nonprofit called Humanity Power, which is focused on ending the isms that are harming our humanity. So ageism, ableism, colorism, classism, sexism, racism. And we do this with high vibrational, so inspiring and positive content. So teaching people what is ableism, what is sexism, and how to really debunk some of the things our brains tell us. And so everything that I do really falls under humanity, whether it's in the workplace or in the home space. And how that relates to my story is I've gone through a lot of different adventures in my life, and being homeless was one of the biggest eye-openers for me as it relates to finding myself and also finding myself in the workplace, because that was very key to my survival at the time. And so what I'm trying to think of in terms of the origin, I started, so out here, I'm in the Bay Area, and the way that the programs work out here is you go to like a county office, and if you're unhoused or homeless, and at that time I was pregnant and I had two small kids. So they tried to speed up the process for me. But essentially you go into like a motel and a hotel, you get the vouchers. And then when they have a space in the shelter, you go into a shelter. And depending on the type of shelter and the family, we usually get our own room. So we were able to get our own room. And there was a 3-month like maximum that you could stay at the shelter. So at that time, I think I was 4 months pregnant and needed a job, because if you could get a job in the system, you would be able to get into transitional housing, which essentially is your own like apartment, and you would pay like a small portion of your income, and you needed income to do it. So I just recall every day going down, dropping my kids off at the daycare, going to the computer lab, and just applying for jobs as much as I could. And I didn't do it. My resume was not good. I don't recall there being any resources like there are now that really like helped you with your resume. But essentially what I did was I went every single day, applied until this recruiter reached out to me. And I found this opportunity where I could potentially get a job. So I recall going into the environment. It was awesome. I'm still friends with the receptionist that was there. I just remember the whole feel of it. And, you know, what's interesting is I have a people ops HR background, and and a lot of that has been influenced by my story of how people are made to feel in those initial moments really do change, you know, whether they take the job or, you know, how they are. So for me, it was just a beautiful experience. The interview went really well. I interviewed with 5 or 6 people on the team. And then I got accepted I got the job offer, which was amazing. And I just remember thinking, I want to create spaces like that for other people, because they didn't know they were interviewing somebody that was homeless. They didn't know that I had 2 kids and I was expecting, like, they didn't know these things, but they treated me with humanity and respect and kindness. And so fast forward, I tell my manager, I'm like, hey, I'm expecting. And she was like, that's amazing, whatever we can do to support you. And I was like, it was a game changer for me. And I knew that was like, more companies needed environments like this. Now, mind you, it was a smaller team within a larger company, but it didn't matter. It changed my entire life. So through getting that job and working really hard, the program that I was in at the shelter recommended me for, so I moved into transitional housing, which was like an apartment. And then the program recommended me to be in a permanent transitional housing, which was a house that they got from a church that a church owned. And I was probably around 6 or 7 months pregnant at this time. And where it stood, I would have to take my baby back to like this transitional housing. But this home that they had, I sat in front of this board of directors. And because of all the stuff that I was able to do, they were like, we want to offer you this house. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life, because I felt like I had a home to come to. And it really just, everything started to blossom from there. And so my story is, what I'm finding out, is not uncommon, you know. And so I like how you're talking about like what other business perspectives can happen, because this is one side that a lot of people do experience.
Awesome. So after that, so after you had a house, did you leave? So how did you become an entrepreneur? Did you you stepped out on your, so do you work for yourself now? Are you?
Yes.
So how did you sort of make that transition from being an employee, you were happy, to deciding that, because it seems like it's risky, no?
Yeah, I've always had the entrepreneur bug. Even when I was in transition, when I got the permanent housing, while I was on maternity leave, I was making onesies for people. So I just made like baby onesies. And so I think that I've always had this inside of me. What happened next was actually pretty interesting. I partnered with this program called Wanda. It's out here in Silicon Valley, and they help single mothers with financial literacy. And essentially what they do is you go through a cohort and you learn about different financial things. And they give you, they match you dollar for dollar. No, for every $1, they match you $2. And you can invest it in a house, you can invest it in a business, you can invest it in different things like that. And so I went through this program, and I've always wanted to do business, but, you know, like you said, there is a lot of risk with that. So, but I always had that in my vision, you know, as just having that in your vision. And through working at different companies, one of the companies I worked at, I ended up getting laid off right as I was transitioning from transitional housing. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go back. And so that's when I was like, my manager had told me, find something that fits you, that you're passionate about. And then that's when I found startups back in oh gosh, I forget exactly the date, but I found my first startup, and it changed my life. Being in that ecosystem and watching all of these ideas pop from nothing, and, you know, Lyft and Uber and all of Postmates, all of these things. So I got the bug, you know, honest. And I realized that a lot of startups were also failing. And it was because of this thing called culture. And so I was like, hey, I could help other companies do this. So in 2016, I left the company I was at and started Culture Circle. To your point of risk, I didn't really know too much about what I was doing. And so I call it my beans and rice phase, because we ate beans, rice, and potatoes, because I was not, like, I didn't know how I was doing it, what was going on. The whole like cells and this and explaining. I had no clue. So for a whole year, it was like that. We were very tight. And then after that year, I joined another company, was able to, get things equaled a bit, and still doing some consulting on the side, still learning a little bit of things. But it was that period of time that I needed to understand not only myself, heal, which was a big thing, heal, and then just get more exposure to business and culture and all of those things. During that time, I became a birth doula, which changed a lot of my life and how I deliver and develop certain things. I went to Bali for this experience and, again, immersing myself in different areas. And then just last year, I picked everything back up again in a bigger way. And I do this full time now. Awesome. There's no safety net other than faith, and it's much about that for me. The transition is when my faith became greater than my fear.
Right.
And I joked with my mom. I said, we have an RV outside that we're renovating. And I said, Mom, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to ask you for $500 and we're going to go in the RV and that's going to be our life. But it's been almost a whole year since I relaunched a lot of the stuff. And I've just been in this state of gratitude as I'm refining and going out to companies and saying, hey, if you treat your people better, you're going to have a better yield. And this is how you do that. So, yeah.
Cool. So I just want to clarify one thing. I Googled it, it's like a birth doula, but I was wondering if for the audience, you could explain what that is.
Yes. So birth doula or birth worker is a person that helps families go through the experience of birth. So usually the way, and every doula is different. So, or birth worker is different. And essentially we come in around, 16 weeks of pregnancy, and we stay with the family. We're there in the birth room, whether it's a home birth or hospital birth. I also, the type of doula that I am, I also do the postpartum, which means after the baby's born. And I stay with my clients for a whole year. So helping them navigate. I'm a mother of 5, so I bring in a lot of good expertise if they ask for it. But essentially, birth doulas or birth workers are different from midwives. So midwives do everything medical. Doulas do nothing medical. So we don't prescribe anything. We are there as emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual support for not only the person birthing, but also for the partner and the family dynamic. So that's what a birth doula is.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
So one specific question that sort of comes to mind just talking to you and sort of seeing your presence online is like you have like very positive energy, just like your attitude and your way of phrasing things and seeing things. Well, at the same time, there's reality. So I'm not trying to bring in negative energy, but I'm trying to say how, like, at least even for me, I'll say the most natural way to see things is like life is not fair. Like just you describing your experience, like even myself, like I feel like that's just not right. That someone shouldn't have to go through that.
Right.
So how you able, at the same time, if you get into that mindset, maybe you won't be able to get out of it. Right. So how are you able to stay positive even going through the challenges you've gone through?
That's a really good question.
Were you ever angry?
Oh yeah. I grew up angry. I had a lot of anger in my heart. And, I grew up in a very loving and interesting household. But I think one pillar for me was watching my grandmother. My grandmother was one of the beginners of gospel music back in the day. And she went around, she sang for kings. She was in, different parts in Africa. She went to Sweden, and a time where she came off of segregation. like right off the hills of segregation. And I watched and witnessed this woman be this powerful force. And she was my favorite person in the world. And, you know, I hit my rock bottom very early on life, around 14, 15. It was really, really challenging. And I will say that it took me a very, very long time to get to the person that you see today. And I am not oblivious, you know, to, you know, the realities of what's happening. I just have tuned in to a different frequency of where all the sweet stuff is. Because I know I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff in life. But if I can somehow get to a point where I am 90% looking at the world in this way of magic and awe, the 10% will be taken care of. And that's the stuff that, because life is not linear. It's a very lunar, it's like the moon. And so knowing that and going what I have, you know, going through what I have gone through, I have made a choice. And every day I make that choice. And very much like any negative choice, you just continue to do it and it becomes a consistent thing. And so for me, my faith plays a big part in that. I seek wisdom. So I spend time with a lot of elders and I sit and I speak with, you know, I sit and listen to wisdom. And then I also heal and forgive a lot. It is been one of the hardest lessons, life lessons that I'm still learning, is how to heal and how to forgive and how those are not different from each other. So, you know, one of the things I did not share in my story is during that time of span of being homeless, I went through a nasty custody battle. I mean, the odds were against me, and justifiably so. I didn't have a place. I didn't have any place to go. But the manager at the time wrote a check for $500 to a family lawyer to help me go through the custody battle. I also, during that time, went through I had to testify against someone who sexually assaulted me while I was pregnant. So I had gone, you know, that just gives you a wave of all of these different things. And through it all, none but ourselves can free our minds, you know? And so staying very focused on what you know, there's only so much energy you can use. And so for me, using the positive energy it creates this momentum. And there are days that I have where I'm just like, I can't do it. I don't know how this is going to happen. And I call my mom and I'm crying, but I get right back up because I feel that there is a calling on my life, just like there is on everyone else's. Everybody is, you know, there's a purpose. And I can very much well not live that purpose, or I can 100% live that purpose. It's a choice. I have a choice. And things are not fair, but things are balanced. And whether I can see that balance in that moment or not, that's my perspective, you know. Definitely not fair, but I think that for like if I were to trail back, I'm like, man, thank God I went through that experience, because then now here I am being able to help others that go through that experience and have deep empathy in creating the changes that we need to see in this world, because there's a lot that needs to happen.
Right. So now I'm just going to go back to like your work. So you help companies with their culture.
Yes.
So just, you know, I was browsing your site and seeing your content. So I'm going to sort of try to make this more, let's get to more a critical understanding of things. Yeah. So half of it is I'm playing devil's advocate to some extent.
Sure.
So in business, you sort of seem to assume that this high vibration, positive energy will help businesses win. But is there a possibility that the world is kind of amoral and it doesn't really, like, if I think of it like sports, I don't really need to be high vibration and positive to win. I just need to win. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a tyrant and you get it done and you grow fast, or we see it all the time. Like many
Yeah.
companies that are successful, they are not necessarily high vibration, let's say, but they are very successful. So how do you sort of explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also a dichotomy with that too, where companies that have been very successful are no longer around for a number of reasons. But the way that I think about it is, and I don't necessarily need a company to adopt this high vibrational content in terms of their workplace. What I'm trying to do is more so bring the humanity into the workplace, because business was never designed for the humans. We look at the Industrial Revolution and how business was built. They were using kids, they were using all of these things. It was never designed for the humans. Yet our humanity has evolved over time, which is why racism and slavery and things like that are not socially acceptable. They're, they happen, but that's like, wait, what? Back in, the 1800s, it was okay. So we've transitioned, or we have gone through this awakening as our humanity, and business is kind of staying where it is. It's like, you do this and we do this, and we're going to keep that flowing. But what's happening is businesses they're going for this marathon mindset, where we have more of a sprinter mentality with our people, where you must be able to speak to the human in order to get the maximum results that you want from your company. It's been proven in different ways. So how do you go about speaking to that human if your business model is very linear, and eventually it won't catch up to where we're going as humanity? And these big businesses are going to be falling away, and things aren't going to be accepted anymore because our humanity is transitioning. So for me, it's preparing business for this next generation of where we are as humanity. I talked to my mom. She's in her 60s, and business for her, she's like, Charisse, we would never be talking about diversity in the workplace. They had affirmative action. I was at the bottom of the memo, and we went about our business. However, that's starting to change as more of our humanity is awakening and becoming. And so if businesses want to be successful, instead of saying, oh, I don't care about that, it's how can I create space for that? It does not take away from the business model at all. It just adds to it. So my balance, or not even argument, or just my words to this is, there have been many powerful companies that have fallen along the wayside. You don't even know their names. And I think business has a beautiful place in our humanity. I just think that both should be equally honored. And in order for that, business definitely needs to catch up with the human. And so that's essentially what I do with adjustments of words and adjustments of philosophies, and just introducing a mindset that is going to help shift some of the ways that businesses are currently doing things now.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to push with two specific things.
Yeah.
So like Frank Slootman of like Snowflake. So they're maybe like the fastest growing company. They're just doing really well. And he said he doesn't want diversity to override merits. So, and he also added a couple of things which I think are true, which is publicly almost no CEO except him will say that, but privately many CEOs feel that way. So what is your view of that?
In regards to, so diversity to override merit, essentially.
Exactly. So it's sort of if you in your company, if you introduce efforts to diversity, you're inherently sacrificing merit, where merit would be like, I'm just picking the best players for the position. Yeah. Regardless, if they are all white, so be it. If they're all black, so be it.
So I don't disagree. I'm not in DEI, for the record. That's not my area of expertise. Where I am in is anthropology, understanding human and humanity. And by nature, we are all diverse. I don't think if you did a poll, have you ever hired someone that wasn't diverse? No.
Right.
So I think I actually agree with what that CEO is saying, for the simple fact that by nature we are diverse. Where I think where it gets messy is just people not understanding diversity isn't a person. Like, I am not a diversity. You are not a diversity. We are collectively diverse. Now, when it comes down to providing the representation of the diverse set of our humanity and how that can amplify business, that should be taken into account. But if you have two candidates, and one candidate is Black and one candidate is white, and the white candidate, which is never a Black and white issue, let me just put it that way, the white candidate has everything that you are looking for, your wish list, you do what's best for the business there. You can't go with you can't just go with what is being threaded as a narrative. You also have to look at the business component. However, you should also make sure you have space that's created for people that might not fit everything that you're looking for. You need to look for people that add to what you're doing, not fit. So I think that there's a shift there. And with that, it creates this more inclusive environment. I don't think companies should focus on diversity because diversity is already there. They should be focusing on being more inclusive. And I think that amplifies components of your business, that changes everything. A more inclusive workplace contributes to ideas, makes better decisions, all of those different things. And you don't need to go down to skin tone to make sure that happens.
So for me personally, so I'll sort of say sort of my views, and I want to let them. I think there are issues in society. Just history happened one kind of way. Yeah. So I think you've pointed this out. It's white people can be racist, Black people can be racist.
Oh yeah.
That being said, history happened one kind of way. So in other words, at least in America, white people enslaved Black people. And maybe there were instances the other way or not, but for the most part, that is a thing that happened.
Right.
And so it's not symmetric. So that has created all kinds of carry-on effects.
Right.
Like Malcolm X says, like, kind of, if I stab you and I pull out, if I stab you 9 inches and I pull it out 6 inches, I haven't fixed the problem. Right. So in other words, we can just say, based on like, as you said, like lack of enlightenment, historically, 1800s, things happened that perpetuated over time. Yeah. So society has issues. Now, as humans, we want to solve those issues.
Right.
But as a business, your opportunities for dealing with things are, in my opinion, far more limited than people assume. Yeah. So although you would like to have like a diverse in many different kinds of workforce, like, in other words, I think there needs to be a way to, business cannot tackle a lot of the problems people are placing at their doorstep. I think that's the fundamental problem. So I think whether it be gender or race or class, there are many inequities that have happened in the world, and a business is not in a position to deal with all those problems. You set out your business for a specific mission, and you can't get distracted from that mission. And although there are many other things that we all agree in our company are bad, we can't tackle those problems, or we will get lost ourselves and we will die. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I can see where you're coming from with this. However, business has the ability to, so, okay, I wrote an article called How Being an Anti-Racist Company Isn't Going to Help Racism.
Yes, I read the article.
Oh, thank you. In that article, I point out the core reason why it's not going to help. If there is forms of oppression in your company, and I list some of those, You have no business going out and posting and talking about anti-race, donating, none of that, because you currently are a part of the problem. So rather than companies going outside, you have the humans inside. Do all the good there, and guess what? Those humans will go out and do good. But what we've had is companies that don't necessarily do that. And so what happens? Those people go out, they don't heal, hurt people. We start to continue to perpetuate. We spend 1/3 of our lives at work. That is a beautiful opportunity for companies to dedicate a portion of their space to some type of change outside of the workplace. Does it need to be its sole mission? Do you need to post every time something happens? Absolutely not. Do you need to take a stance on I don't think companies should do that. And unless they have the bandwidth for it, but they should not be following the next person. Ben & Jerry's is a perfect example. They have the bandwidth to talk about all of those things. If you're a company that can barely take care of your people, what does the airline say? Put your mask on first before you offer assistance. Because what they're doing is they're causing more problems, and then you either have a mismanagement of resources, or they're just trying to copycat a bunch of people. Right after George Floyd got killed, I got a bunch of different calls from companies. And I had one specific call with the VC company. They templated their responses and passed it on to every single portfolio company they had. So templated as in, this is how we feel about changed a few words. You're taking up space where people can actually be utilizing that. It's just performative. So I think a lot of companies have followed this like diversity narrative, and they have no idea what they're doing. They should stick to their business and focus on the internal, because the internal will, just like with us, we don't try and change people from the outside, we change ourselves. I think Mother Teresa had said, and I'm not going to quote this exactly right, but she's like, if everyone focused on cleaning their doorstep, every doorstep would be clean. And so that's kind of the mindset that companies should be having, unless they have the bandwidth. But their people are burnt out, underpaid, barely appreciated. So companies like that have no business talking about what's going on the outside. There's organizations that can really hold that space. So fix what's happening internally, and then go out and try and do that work. Because like, you're right, we like to think as humans, we are very complex in mindset. For example, texting and driving, right? I can text, I can drive. So the brain's like, we can text and drive. No, we can't, because what else is happening? There's so many different things. And what about this? We are not accounting for the variable. The humans are the variable. So businesses have enough to, and that's what I work on. And this is the foundation of the culture. And I tell companies, before you start working on your DEI or however you want to call it, you need to work on the culture. And what is the culture? It's the evolving survival mechanism that the people use within the workplace to achieve a mutually satisfying goal. And once that's solidified, then you can branch outward. But if you don't take care of the internal, I mean, like I said, I agree. I see where you're coming from, and I agree to a point. Now, if companies have the ability to do something, then do it, and do it right. But this kind of lukewarm, performative stuff, that's what's causing these issues. And it's, not really helping. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So one final question I had for you.
Yes.
So something I spend, I've been thinking about is, so it kind of goes back to this. In general, regardless of if the world or someone else hurts you, or as a people, nobody can build anybody back up. So like let's just say, like, let's say we think of like slavery, we think of racism, we think of sexism. The unfortunate thing is that you can hurt other human beings, but you actually can never heal them. Even as a doctor, you can just maybe try to create the environment so they can heal themselves.
Right.
So in other words, so it's difficult because, even within our community, let's say among Black people, I'm Nigerian, I'm from Nigeria, from Lagos. And we're in a third world country. And I just think of, you think of colonization, I think of all the things we don't have. And it's easy to sort of focus on all the bad things that happen to us. Yeah. Well, at the same time, we're also imperfect. And there are many things that so there's a point. So in other words, how within a community, any community that feels like you're marginalized, how do we talk about personal responsibility of our role for healing ourselves, our responsibility to our future selves to get it done?
Whew. That's a very good question. And it's a question that I at least know a lot in the Black community we failed at. Somebody did a poll about how do you recover from certain types of trauma. Could be any kind, could be losing a job, losing a loved one, losing, whatever. And they gave an option for forgiveness, and forgiveness was the less chosen one. Nelson Mandela said, if I walked out with bitterness and hate in my heart, I would still be in prison. Our society does not glorify forgiveness. It glorifies revenge. That concept of karma, which is really fascinating because karma actually, if you believe in it, is a Hindu belief of reincarnation, which technically means it's not something that's happening in this lifetime. It's happening after you come out. So we use karma wrong anyway. So that's another, kind of topic to dive in later. But we don't, to heal, it has to hurt. Our wounds teach us that. If you ever get like a cut and you got that period where it's just hurting, it's healing. The fever is the body's way of dealing with the sickness. There's birth. My most uncomfortable components of having a baby during birth is the process in which the birth is happening. We don't honor that enough. We don't sit in that enough. We use a lot of our technology to mask, distract cyber zombies, different things like that. And I remember going for a float. There, it's like a pod with sea salt or seawater, and you just float in there. And I remember them talking about, if you get bored in your float, just know you're bored of yourself, and it's like, whoa, I'm saying all this to say, the answers are always inside of us, and we are spiritual beings in physical form. And when we detach ourselves from what we truly are and we pack ourselves with labels, we negate. Once you label me, you negate me. Once you are labeling yourself, you negate all of the things that are needed to process and comprehend and flow through healing. I can tell you that the healing process for me is not fun, because it's releasing of the ego, releasing of the ego, releasing of the ego. And the ego doesn't want you to heal. It wants you to hang out with misery and doubt and all of those, negative emotions that don't really serve us. And so if more people spent time with forgiveness of themselves and of others, and then of others, we would start to see a shift in the way that we think about things. If Nelson Mandela didn't go into prison, this calm, beautiful human that we saw when he got out, he went in just angry and upset. And it was through the death of the ego and the enlightenment of the internal, his internal being, that he was able to come out the way that he was, you know, kick it with Desmond Tutu and help heal South Africa from a very, like, horrible. We talk about segregation in America, apartheid was horrible. So I think if we leaned more towards the poets and the philosophers and our own internal gauge, we can start to see the breadcrumbs that life is trying to lead us towards, that it's not about what society paints as glamorous or what you can scroll through on your Instagram feed. It's about you being on your own personal legend and following that despite the things that are happening with you. And that's, you know, it's not easy. It really is not easy, but with the concept of ease, you can do it. I mean, you talk from Nigeria, from Lagos, like, I know you're here to talk about me, but I know you have a story too. Like, and the way, and the common thread between us, other than our humanity, is that we decided to heal and move forward. And we will continue to do that for the rest of our lives. It doesn't just stop.
For sure.
So that's what I would say, is start with that forgiveness of yourself. And then it just opens up more, like, oh, I have now started to heal. It hurts, but I am healing. And, you know, it's, I've practiced this a lot, and I actually have like a little formula that I use to help me heal with certain things. Cause sometimes I'm an analytical kind of thinker, and that sometimes gets in the way, but it really does help me process what needs to be done.
Cool, awesome. Thank you very much. This was like the most soulful conversation I've had in a long time. Cool. Cool. So one thing I want to know is, like, is there anywhere where, you know, if people want to engage with your work, they want to follow you, they want to learn more, where is LinkedIn the best place to follow you at?
Yes, LinkedIn right now, I'm more active on LinkedIn than any social platform. And then I also have a YouTube channel where I do the LinkedIn lives that go there, so you can watch some of that stuff. But LinkedIn is the best place to find me. You can also email me, charisse@culturecircle.co. I do have an Instagram, which you could follow me there, but I am not great at social media, so I only post every once in a while. So, which I know is not like the perfect algorithm, but that's just how I do it. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram, or you can email me directly. And I'm always open to having conversations with any human that wants to have them.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely post your social links. And you have a nonprofit where people can support the work.
Yes, so we are gearing up. August is nonprofit month. So shout out to all the nonprofits. May you be thriving in abundance and prosperity. And so Humanity Power, yes, humanitypower.org. If you want to support, we feed communities, and we're expanding that. We feed the unhoused, and we're expanding that. And we're also teaching communities how to build community. You know, we don't have porches anymore, so you can't just go hang out on the porch. How do you build community? Because there is unity in our community. So, or there's unity in our humanity, and there's also unity in the community. So you could go to humanitypower.org and support any of those efforts. We also have a children's series with Humanity the Manatee. So I'm teaching kids about humanity. The second book is coming out soon. We have some super cool swag. So Humanity Power shirts. And so, yeah, just check it out. We have some good material that we're still producing, but it's a beautiful nonprofit with the mission to help end the isms.
Cool. Yeah, Business of Business will definitely chip in a little, whatever we can, which will not be like $1,000. We'll do $1,000.
Oh, that's with gratitude. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Charisse. Look forward to staying in touch. I'm following you.
Thank you.